Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Box Office Talk. This is the show where I break down what happened at the box office, see if my predictions for the top 5 are correct, then make predictions for next week's top 5. So let's get right on into it. Last week, I predicted the number 1 would be Despicable Me 4, number 2 would be Inside Out 2, number 3 would be Fly Me to the Moon, number 4 would be Longlegs, and number 5 would be A Quiet Place Day 1. And wow, only one of my predictions right for this weekend. I really missed the mark, and I really underestimated pretty much my most anticipated film for this year. You know, now that I've seen it, it's obviously other films, but it was for the longest time. You know, it's here, and it really performed very well. So it's one of those times where like my predictions are all fucked. Everyone else's predictions are all fucked too, but good. You know what I mean? And we'll talk a bit more about how good this is in just a little bit. But first, we do need to get out of the way that number 1 was, of course, Despicable Me 4. Once again, you know, holding over pretty solidly. You know, the 3-day opening weekend last weekend was in the 70s. This weekend it made 44 million. So still holding strong there. Now adds to a domestic total of 211 million. It sits behind the original Despicable Me by 41 million now. Worldwide, it is sitting at 437 million. That which places it 107 million away from the original film. As far as the Despicable Me / Minions franchise, it still has a little bit of ways to go until it outgrosses some of the other ones. It's not one of those that is like, you know, outgrossing movies left to right, not like Inside Out 2, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But, you know, it cost 100 million to make, and they're already, you know, quadrupled that by sitting at 437 million worldwide. So it really isn't that big a deal. I think it might just go to show for Illumination, like this, you know, style of, you know, making these movies, but kind of in like the cheapest ways possible. Not necessarily in animation, although the budgets are considerably lower compared to like a Inside Out 2 or some other bigger blockbuster kind of animated films. Their budgets are considerably cheaper than some of those, which, you know, it's cool that the movies still look as good as they do with them, but, you know, story-wise and, you know, character model-wise, like reusing certain character models and, you know, finding all the shortcuts, you know, and not really breaking any new ground, kind of just, you know, doing typical shit and not really building on it, you know what I mean? Maybe that is starting to get to some people in a way, you know what I mean? Obviously, you know, kids will see it no matter what, but as far as like, you know, adults will also see animated films as well, you know, they'll have some kind of curiosity, and if you're not even attempting to reinvent the wheel, you know what I mean, with these movies, it could potentially show like some kind of diminishing return. The fact that it's not like kind of clear out of the gate, oh, it's not, you know, blazing ahead already. That being said, like I said, because the budget is so low, they've already made their money back and they're all good. But that's, you know, that's all speculatory and who really knows. That's just me, you know, pontificating. Let's move on to the good shit. The good shit this weekend. Number 2 was Longlegs. Like I said, one of those instances where I was wrong on my predictions, but I'm totally happy with it. I think I even mentioned last weekend it would be so cool if this movie did really well. But my thinking was, you know, sometimes with not necessarily just Neon, but just some of these more like horror films that are only gonna appeal to like a more kind of niche audience, or it seems like it is because, you know, you see trailers for them, but then only small turnouts at the theaters. I thought it was going to be another instance like that, and Neon doesn't really have like a really big hit on their hands before, you know what I mean? They've had like mild hits before, but like it was only this year when like Immaculate got like their highest opening weekend ever for Neon, and even that movie didn't really go on to gross a lot. And, you know, some of the other films they've made have gone on to make more money than Immaculate overall. It's just, you know, they roll them out like limited release. Immaculate was their best wide release, I'm pretty sure. But then here comes Longlegs, same fucking year for Neon, and it opened to $22 million. I think what I was thinking, what other people were thinking, this might get into like 10 million, and maybe that's it. 22 million is obviously way better than what people are thinking, and supposedly the budget of this film is either exactly at 10 or it's a little below $10 million. That's the initial production budget. So the fact, and that, you know, that's before marketing and whatnot, but the fact that they have essentially already doubled potentially their max initial production budget in their opening weekend, and there's not even a worldwide total to add that to, that is pretty fucking stellar for a horror film, for an original horror film, just an original film in general. You know what I mean? This is all great news, you know what I mean? As far as Neon, yeah, this is the best opening weekend they have ever had for a wide release, and for 2024, it is the best opening weekend for an original horror film. For Neon, it has already outgrossed the entire domestic run of Ferrari, and it now is sitting behind I, Tonya by 8 million. But that already places it in Neon's top 3 highest grossing films domestically. Like, it's already there. That is pretty fucking stellar, you know? And there's no worldwide total. I'm not sure when exactly that those will be rolling in, if they do. I say if, it probably will. Maybe not by a whole lot, though, is what I mean. So we'll be able to compare Neon worldwide stats, you know, when those come in, probably in another video, though. But damn, domestically, this movie's rocking and rolling. You gotta give it up for the people marketing the film. They really did paint the picture that this is a movie you just gotta see, you know? They hid Nicolas Cage, but, you know, kept his name on there, so people are like, they're hiding him for a reason. You get little glimpses in the trailer. You got to see the whole thing. You know, people have, you know, praised it so much beforehand, to the point where some people have even said, like, man, you're painting a bad picture trying to say it's the scariest movie of all time. I saw it. It wasn't that scary. I mean, yeah, the tone was really consistent, you know, filling me with dread and keeping me in suspense with the atmosphere, but it was not scary at all. Not scary one bit. Those people are funny. But either way, so some people might even say, like, oh, false advertising, but I mean, shit, you saw the movie. It makes me wonder how well it's going to hold next weekend. I'm not sure. It might be that thing where, like, because of the initial hype and build up from the marketing, from the word of mouth, it might dip really drastically in the second weekend. But I mean, it already did so well right now. That's not even really that big of a concern for me. It would be great, though, if it somehow found a way to hold over. The only really big competition coming out next weekend is Twisters, and that's gonna, you know, soak up a lot more of, like, the 4-quadrant kind of audience anyway, so we might be seeing slightly larger dips for all of these movies that we're talking about today anyways. Or it might not, because, you know, Twisters and Longlegs, as far as, like, the audience for those two films, they do kind of overlap, but not too much, you know what I mean? So you don't know, you know, we'll see how it goes. You know, it could do that thing with horror where it dips drastically, or the word of mouth is so strong and people are now going to be talking about how well it did this weekend. Maybe it'll carry on, and that has me pretty excited. I want to see how this movie does. Already, though, you know, it's made its budget back, essentially. if it is in fact 10 million or below, that's just great news. I fucking love this movie, by the way. Go see it. It's incredible. Number 3 is Inside Out 2, making 20 million, so it's just a little bit behind Longlegs. The fact also that Longlegs could just barely squeak ahead of Inside Out 2. Like I said, what I was thinking before, this could have been one of those movies that gets a little bit of money, but not a whole lot, like a little bit of a success on, like, a very minor scale. But Longlegs really swung right out of the gate, knocking Inside Out 2 just down a peg, but only by like a 2 million difference, though. That's incredible. Anyways, Inside Out 2 made 20 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of 572 million. Now, domestically, it is still behind Incredibles 2 by 36 million. So next weekend, or shit, depending on how much competition Twisters takes away, maybe the weekend after, we will be seeing it become the highest grossing Disney Pixar film domestically. Worldwide, however, now that it's sitting at $1.350 billion, that places it 108 million over the worldwide run of Incredibles 2. So domestically, doesn't matter, because for the entire world, Inside Out 2 is the highest grossing Disney Pixar film ever. Wow. Like I was kind of saying, you know, Incredibles 2, that took technically a little longer to get out, and people really love that from their childhood. They've had a chance to really grow with it. And Inside Out 2, people have grown with that also. But still, there was a couple years shaved off of the wait for this sequel as opposed to Incredibles 2, so it was kind of like, it'll probably make a lot of money, but, you know, will it be the new champ for Pixar? And, I mean, yeah, here you go. There you go, man. I really don't have anything else to add here, because it's the new champ worldwide. Domestically, we'll talk about that when that happens, but it's kind of like, we know it's going to at this point, so it's not even really worth talking about that much, you know, kind of old news. Your success, Inside Out 2. everyone's all about Longlegs now. That's way more impressive these days. Let's move on to number 4, which is A Quiet Place Day 1, making 11 million, adding to a domestic total of 116 million. So that places it 44 million away from A Quiet Place Part 2. Worldwide, it crossed over. It is sitting at 220 million worldwide. So now it is behind A Quiet Place Part 2 by 76 million. And if it gets to 268 million worldwide, so that's only 48 million away, I think we will be seeing it inch closer to that next weekend. You know, that will be quadrupling its 67 initial production budget. So really big hit. It doesn't even matter if it doesn't outgross any of these other A Quiet Place movies. It might get to 2 at some point, but you know, as long as it can quadruple its budget while it's here, that is pretty spectacular. Not going to lie on that one. You know, horror, woohoo. It was looking pretty bad. It was kind of like, yeah, horror was doing fine for like low budgets, you know, okay, the money it made isn't too bad compared to that, but it was kind of like, man, horror was really booming for a while, and it just seemed like it was really dropping off in this year at least, especially with like Abigail not doing very well. But here you go. Here you go right here, doing pretty stellar. Number 5 is Fly Me to the Moon. I thought this one would do better than Longlegs, and I was horribly mistaken, totally wrong. On a budget of $100 million, this Apple Sony production made $10 million this weekend for the 3-day worldwide. That only adds to 19 million. Holy shit. And I know we've talked about before when it comes to like certain Apple productions, they partner up with a distributor to get it out into the theaters, but then really their main purpose is to have it playing, you know, on their streaming service. So who knows how much money they need to make in the theaters for their other half of their partnership in the distribution or whatever, but they really care about streaming numbers when it comes to their originals. That being said, they really have not caught a fucking break. You know, with Argyle this year especially, you know, that was one that was like really talked about as far as that being a big flop. Napoleon a couple months ago and Killers of the Flower. Not that, you know, those runs were seen as like disastrous. You know, it was kind of like, it's you know, modest. You can't really say that they broke even or anything like that if you go by the traditional numbers, but it was like it's a modest enough, you know, decent, respectable run in the theaters. You know, 2024 for Apple has been kind of fucking abysmal. Argyle first and now this, and it's like, man. Will they ever catch it? Will they ever have like a legit success in the theater? Wolf's is coming out later this year, so maybe it's that. We'll see. That might cost $100 million too. And that's the thing. I've seen Fly Me to the Moon, and it's a decent movie. You know, I enjoy it. It was a cute movie, but when I saw that it cost $100 million after I saw the movie, I was like, ain't no fucking way. You know what I mean? It's not a movie where like the money is like really on the screen. You know, like you recognize like there's some work that has to be made as far as like you capture the era, you know, as far as like costumes and stuff like that, but it's not like you watch it, it's very much so like a comfort movie. It's considering the setting and everything, it still is like a very low stakes rom-com kind of movie. The fact that it cost $100 million is kind of baffling to me because there's nothing about it that screams this was a really expensive movie other than you have some, I assume, expensive actors in it. So I don't know. I don't know. As far as director Greg Berlanti's filmography, the opening weekend was 1 million below Love, Simon and 3 million below Love as We Know It. So actually, it's kind of close for him. You know, this kind of success is kind of typical, except usually those other two movies didn't cost $100 million. And I think Love, Simon did do well, if I remember correctly. I don't know anything about Love as We Know It, but I think Love, Simon, if I am recalling correctly from when I did videos back then, it did decently, all things considered. It needs 30 million until it outgrosses Love, Simon's entire domestic run, by the way, and then worldwide, like I said, sitting at 19 million, needs 46 million until it outgrosses Love, Simon. So I mean, what do you want me to say? I already said it. Jesus Christ. Number 6 is Bad Boys Ride or Die, making 4 million, adding to a domestic total of 184 million. So that places it 20 million away from Bad Boys for Life. Worldwide, it is sitting at 377 million, so 47 away from For Life, but more importantly 23 million until it gets to 400 million, and that's a quadrupling of your 100 million initial production budget. See, that's a movie that cost $100 million and you watch and it's like, yeah, that makes sense. You know what I mean? And it's only, if I remember the numbers correctly, it's only slightly more expensive than For Life. Also, like For Life was like proven to be a hit, and they brought it back. Who knows if this franchise can still go well? And they only bumped the budget up for this new film just by a little bit because they knew they would at the very least double that. You know what I mean? But now reaping the benefits of not going overboard like Fly Me to the Moon. The previous film that we have talked about. And also, it really does make you wonder, man, the producing team behind Beverly Hills Cop 4, do you think they maybe regret not trying to put that in the theater? You know what I mean? Because it's like, it's Jerry Bruckheimer is still technically involved in the Beverly Hills Cop movie. I guess the logo is up at the start. And he produced Top Gun Maverick recently, big theater success with that one, and also with the Bad Boys movies, sort of kind of comparing, you can kind of make a comparison between them and Beverly Hills Cop as far as like, comedies with some very successful, not just black actors, but also comedians. It just makes you think, Beverly Hills Cop, I'm assuming it's doing well on Netflix because, it's Beverly Hills Cop 4 and it's available on Netflix, but it makes you think, are they having a little bit of remorse? The producers not trying to get somebody else to pick up their film other than Netflix before Netflix gave them the death note of never gracing a theater screen. Who knows how much money that could have made is what I'm saying. Because those movies, those movies used to be big hits in the theaters. At least the first couple, maybe not 3, I don't know. But at least the first 2. Anyways, just makes you think, right? Number 7 is Horizon: An American Saga, Chapter 1. Now, this had an interesting development this week, but let's talk about the numbers first. It made $2.4 million, adding to a domestic total of $27 million, so it places it $31 million away from Costner's Open Range. Worldwide, it is sitting at $28 million, only $1 million difference from the domestic run. So that places it $8 million over Postman, but $40 million away from Open Range. So Open Range is the one to beat. It's never going to touch Dances with Wolves. It's probably never going to touch Open Range. But because of how disastrous this film has been doing, they have pulled Chapter 2 from theaters this August. Like, it's no longer coming out. People, if you already bought your tickets, you're gonna get a refund. It reminded me of, like, not that I bought a ticket for Chapter 2 yet, but it did remind me of, like, when COVID was kind of starting up in 2020. I already had tickets for, well, I think it was Fast 9 and A Quiet Place 2, maybe even No Time to Die. I had advanced tickets for all those movies, but then once March was rolling in, I started to get the Fandango emails of refunded. Kind of, man, it's wow. Crazy. And of course their excuses, like, it's not gone for good, we're just giving a little bit of more breathing room so the audience can really find the first film before we dive into part 2. And I just have to be honest, no matter, because there, people are divided on this, but there are some people that really didn't like it, me. And there are some people that are trying to defend it, some people that did genuinely enjoy it, some people are fans. But I just don't see that kind of word of mouth really spreading. I really don't see a reality where many people find Chapter 1 and they're like, yeah, that's a really good movie that I want to spend more time, like, I want to spend more time with these characters. You know what I mean? In what it essentially feels like a History Channel show. Maybe a better than average History Channel show. I'm not really sure what their quality control is over there. I don't spend my time watching History Channel, but still, that's what the movie feels like. It doesn't feel like a movie. It feels like 3-hour-long episodes strung together, and then they just end abruptly. And there's no theme for Chapter 1. There's no narrative conclusion for a chapter. When you split a movie into 2 parts, it means the story is so big you have to kind of end it, and there's a reason for it, like thematically. This is one of those movies that doesn't. So I don't see that really happening. I think the word was they had started filming Chapter 3. I don't even know if they're going to be able to finish it, or if they do, maybe Horizon comes out on Max, because this is a Warner Brothers film. Maybe it comes out on Max and it's a big hit on streaming. Maybe they just pivot then. But I feel like also one of the things that they're trying to do is, like, move away, because The Penguin is no longer considered a Max original. It's coming to HBO. So is the Harry Potter show that they're going to do, the Lantern show. So it seems like they're trying to move away from streaming also. So it's like, is that even something they're going to do? Fuck me, Costner. Let's move on to number 8, which is Maxine, dropping really low, making 2.07 million, adding to a domestic total of 11 million. Now, it did outgross Pearl by 2 million, and it's a couple 100,000 over X, so good success there as far as the X trilogy worldwide. Same kind of thing. It's now sitting at 14.7 million. It's 4 million over Pearl, but now 1 million away from X. We're going to be seeing that happening. And it didn't, have like the biggest opening weekend in the world. So when I say like a drastic drop off, I really just mean as far as placement. This movie opened in the top 5, but it couldn't like have that much staying power or like a positive word of mouth to kind of keep it around longer. So now it's just dropped off. And of course, Longlegs is here. And I think people are way more interested in what the hell is going on with Longlegs and that marketing. I think when word of mouth started to come out about Maxine, whether you like it or not, I think there might have been some people who are like, you know what I mean? Like, if because it was so the fact that there is division, can be a put off for some people, you know what I mean? I did not care for this film. As someone who really enjoyed the other two, I did not care for this film. There are people out there that claim to have enjoyed this film, and that's crazy to me, but they did. But I don't think the word of mouth is strong enough to keep people around, because I think when some people have even said, like, there are plenty of positive reviews that say, sure, it's not as good as the other two and it gets a little sloppy at parts, but, and that's not necessarily a stirring endorsement. So still, it's doing well. I don't know what the initial production budget of this is, but I'm going to assume, since Pearl and X were shot for 1 million, that they made the most out of whatever limited budget they had here. 14.7 mil is probably pretty good. Number 9 is Sound of Hope, Story of Possum Trot. Once again, no luck for Angel Studios this year. No Sound of Freedom, making 1.3 million, adding to a domestic total of 9.7 million. Nowhere close to doubling that 8.5 million initial production budget yet, because there's no worldwide total. Also, sorry. And then I really don't have anything else to add. I don't know anything about this movie. I don't want to know anything about this movie. Don't tell me about this movie. Anyways, closing out the video, number 10, a re-release, The Lion King, making 1.07 million, adding to a domestic total of 421 million. Worldwide, it is sitting at 986 million. So there you go. The Lion King, still making money. At least it's not the remake. That would have been worse. Anyways, now it's time for the fun part, the predictions for next week's top 5. Number 1, pretty easy, I think, will be Twisters. The early tracking is kind of indicating it'll, at best open in like the 50s, and that's kind of where I would expect it to initially at first too. But there have been some early word of mouth is pretty positive as far as like, yeah, this feels like a really like genuinely great summer blockbuster film. The movies, Tom Cruise, Mr. Movies himself, was seen at the premiere and promoting it, and he had a blast in the theater apparently. So and Glenn Powell's kind of on the rise, and people love Daisy Edgar Jones from her other work as well. This will propel her to a new status. So I just think there's a lot of strong things going for this movie. It does cost $200 million apparently, if Wikipedia is to be believed right now. So with Deadpool and Wolverine being literally the weekend after this, they're gonna need like a really great opening and staying power. You know what I mean? Like, God, that would suck if this movie's like genuinely great and then Marvel once again does that thing where they fucking just nuke it off the face of the earth. Oh God, another, speaking of Mr. Movies, Tom Cruise, another Dead Reckoning situation where it came out at just the wrong time. I think even like smack dab in July also, is that right? Jesus. Anyways, number 2 I think will be Despicable Me 4, number 3 Longlegs, number 4 Inside Out 2, and number 5 A Quiet Place Day 1. But what are your predictions for next week's top 5? Leave them in the comments below, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.